Welcome back into the Godly Young Men Podcast, episode 92. We've got I think this is going to be a fascinating episode. It's funny. So I was suggesting this episode to Joe, and I think at first he wasn't super excited about it. He seemed like, yeah, okay, sure, we can do that. But then he put this outline together, and it is lengthy. It's a robust outline, and I think it's got some really good stuff on here that it's going to be a good discussion.
I kept adding, and then it was like, yeah, I could add this too, and then I could add this too. Yeah, so no, it worked out.
We're talking about different types of strength. We actually alluded to this in an episode probably 8 or 9 episodes ago where we were going to get into it, and I was like, let's just devote a whole episode to, because there's different types of strength for guys. And so we're going to get into the 4 different types, and Joe, I'm going to let you kind of introduce all of them, or all of the first section here. But the different types of strength, so you've got physical strength, obviously, you've got mental strength, emotional strength, and moral strength are the 4 we're going to talk about. But this is important for godly young men.
Yeah, absolutely. When you think about how you define a man, I think men would like to be defined by a lot of different things, right? There's intelligent, suave, confident, cool, hardworking, adequate, respectable, things like that. But perhaps more than anything, what really defines a man, in my opinion, is strength.
Yeah.
Being strong. And we want to be strong in these multiple areas because we have people relying on us, right? I mean, we want to have all 4. A lot of times it's easy to just focus on one or think that just one suffices. Well, I'm really physically strong. And you see these guys that they're gym nuts, right? They're these gym bros that, okay, that's great, but they're addicted to porn, or they're gym bros, or maybe they're not. They're saints and they're fantastic and they got moral down, or they got their emotional down, but they're wimps, right? They don't stand up to anybody, or they're not very mentally strong where the lightest of wind kind of comes through and knocks them off their game. We want to be men who are strong in every aspect of our lives, and we think these 4 really kind of help in that area. There's probably spiritual strength we could have added that goes along with moral strength, but that's a strength of relationship with God. We just had prayer a couple weeks back. We had we talked about the importance of a relationship with God, so we left that one off this outline specifically. But most of these go hand in hand. Most of the time, you're going to have someone who is mentally strong. They're going to be strong in other ways, right? Like they're probably going to go to the gym because they can tell themselves no, or they can tell themselves, "I'm just going to get up and go." That's a mental strength that goes hand in hand with the ability to get strong physically. Or maybe you have the ability to control your emotions. A lot of times, it's going to go hand in hand with emotional or with
mental strength,
with mental strength. It's going to go hand in hand sometimes with moral strength, where I'm not flying off the handle in anger and screaming at somebody because I'm controlling myself in that way. So a lot of times those do, but not always. You look at a few different people in Scripture. You look at Samson, very physically strong, lacking on the moral, right? Lacking
and
on
even the emotional,
kind of, exactly. You look at somebody like Elijah, incredibly moral, right? He's a man of God, but he also lacks on the little bit of the mental toughness at times and the emotional strength at times. Not across the board, but there is a little bit of that, right? So just because we're great in one area doesn't mean that we're always great in another area. Part of that's okay, but as a man, we need to be working on each.
I think it's natural for men, and I think it's good for men to look at weakness as something that is kind of that's negative. Like we to look down on weakness, and not in a prideful, arrogant, oh man, that person's really weak, but like for us as guys,
as an individual,
it's important to value strength and to look down on weakness, if that makes sense. And so for all 4 of these, as we're about to get into kind of the difference and then specifically like what happens if you're not strong in these areas, I think is kind of the next section of our outline, is think about, I'd encourage you to kind of evaluate yourself in each one of these areas, even though we haven't described them yet. How physically strong are you? How mentally strong are you? How emotionally strong are you? And how morally strong are you? Rate yourself 1 to 10, kind of figure out what are you pretty good at. Maybe, like Joe said, maybe hit the gym a lot, so the physical strength's not really an issue, but man, maybe you really struggle with mental or with moral strength, and maybe vice versa. It is our proposal that we need to be as strong as we possibly can in all 4 of these areas. That like, 2 out of 3 is not, or 2 out of 4 is not bad, 3 out of 4. No, like if you view yourself as, man, I am pretty emotionally weak, you need to improve that. And we're going to talk about how we can do each of those things. But as you think about your job as a father and a husband, if you're not there yet, what it will be one day to be a father and a husband requires all 4 of these.
Yes, it does.
Physical strength, of course, moral strength, like all of these strengths are required to be a really godly, not just young man, but husband and father.
And this is the importance of this, and why we're discussing this is
for sure.
Two parts. First off, this is going to help in your relationship with yourself. As you mentioned, we really need to be pushing weakness to the side as much as we can as a man of, I don't want to be weak where my wife is going to have to step up or somebody else is going to have to step up. We will be happy with ourselves when I think we are pursuing strength in these areas because we're called to take dominion. We're called to be strong and courageous in the Lord, right? As long as God's at the head. So number one is your relationship with yourself. Number two is you are called to lead your family and to provide primarily safety and security for your wife and kids. They have to be able to rely on you to be strong. They have to be able to say, I'm not strong enough in this, because your wife is the weaker vessel, as Scripture says. You're called to be the stronger vessel. That is inherent in the other side of this, is if she's the weak vessel, you can't both be weak. Somebody's going to have to be the strong one. That's what a man is called to be.
Here's the other thing about this. Our society right now is glorifying weak men.
Correct.
They are glorifying weak men. I mean, men are literally transitioning themselves into women, and that's held up and like, oh man, that's amazing. Masculinity is frowned upon, as we've talked about a dozen times. But like, this is why guys like Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson, to a much less harmful degree, guys like that are looked up to as, that's masculine. Joe Rogan, like, these are masculine guys. Wow. It's like, because the world is glorifying weakness, and these guys are pushing back saying, no, weakness is stupid. We need to be strong. Right. That's why guys are gravitating to that. And that's what that's what girls want ultimately. That's what your wife wants and needs, is you to be. She doesn't need you being weak. She doesn't want you being weak in any one of these areas. She wants men who are strong. And so this is why, in a culture where, again, weakness is glorified and strength is kind of looked at as, maybe we should dial back the strength. It's important for us as godly men to have the proper biblical perspective on this. No, strength for men is a good thing, not a bad thing.
And if you are interested in a woman and she's not interested in you being strong because she's a feminist, we're kind of egalitarian, we'll take it together.
We'll both be strong.
No, that's not what it's called to be. You're called to be the leader. You're called to be the man of the house. And so this also goes along with like who you attract and who you gravitate. If you find a girl who's willing to submit to your leadership and to your authority and to your strength, and she goes, man, that's really attractive when you are strong, you got yourself a good one. Because whether she struggles in other areas, she will be willing to submit to you, who is intended to be strong. But if you're weak in these areas, we'll get into, there's going to be problems. Because if you're weak physically, if you're not physically strong, they can't really trust you to protect them when things get tough. An intruder comes into your house, and it's like, what, are you going to make your wife get out of bed? There is a strength element to, you want to walk out and for the intruder to go, oh man, I picked the wrong house.
Yep.
That's not good. That's what we're looking for. If they can't trust you in physical strength, will you provide for them by any means, appropriate means necessary? Obviously not stealing, things like that, but like there's a physical strength to, if I have to work 12 hours a day to do it, I'll do it. And she can look at that and, hey, she hates you being gone, things like that, but she can trust it. There's safety and security in that, and that is your job as a man, is to provide safety and security for your wife, for your kids. The wimp who can't lift 20 pounds, how much security are you going to provide? There's a reason women are attracted to the muscles.
After a 6.5 hour shift of work. Yeah,
exactly. And got to come home and, just let me watch some TV for the next 2.5 hours, and then I'll be ready to talk. No. A woman's not going to want to follow that. She's going to end up being more of a man than you are.
And we're not trying to speak for women here, but it is scientifically proven that women value security almost over everything else.
Correct.
Security. So when you have a wife, when you marry somebody, she's looking to you for that security. I'm glad. I mean, you said it very well, Joe, in the sense of like, first of all, the physical protection, kind of the dramatic example of an intruder or, walking down the street or whatever. But also, when it comes to, am I going to be taken care of? There is a physical strength element to, again, are you, like I just said, I'm just so tired after you work 7 hours in a day or your 35-hour work week or whatever. Does she know that he is physically strong enough to work 2 or 3 different jobs to make sure that I am well taken care of? That's a big deal. And so if you're not physically strong, your wife, your family is going to have a hard time trusting and depending on you. What about mentally strong, Joe? So if you're not mentally strong, and again, we're going to end this outline with how do we develop this? How do we build these different types of strength? But if you're not mentally strong, how is your family going to trust you to kind of conquer the problems of life? Life can get very difficult. Life can beat you up. Life can really just take you for a roller coaster ride. And if you're one of these people that just kind of folds under the pressure of big decisions or folds under the pressure of any kind of difficulty whatsoever, that's a lack of mental strength. And if your wife or your family, as kind of those are the examples we're using, looks at you and is like, man, if things are great, he's pretty strong, but man, if things go south, he can just, again, fold like a tent. they're not going to be able to trust you to be able to handle the difficulties life throws at you. That's a big one for this.
That's right. They need to be able to lean on you in not just good times, but in tough times. You have to be the mentally strong one who stays logical, who stays structured, who stays productive, even when things are bad. That doesn't mean we don't have low points. We'll get into the emotional as well, some of the depression that hits. But the mental toughness is being able to see the problems of what's kind of coming. You're understanding the times and go, we can do it. We can get through this, and here's how we're going to do it. And you provide a path forward where you continue to be logical when everything else around you is crumbling. And if you can do that, you're in good shape.
You know what I think of is sports analogies of like when you're a role player on LeBron James's team. It's like, I think we'll be good because we got LeBron, even if things don't go well in the first half. Or Mahomes is a great example. Like the guy when he's trailing by 10 is like, his winning percentage is insane.
Tim Tebow, baby.
Yeah, okay, maybe not quite. But no, like with Mahomes, it's like, can you imagine being on the team of like, oh man, we're down 7 in the fourth quarter. We got Mahomes.
We got
We're
Mahomes.
Good. We're good. Similarly, with your family, your kids, especially and your wife, they need to be able to say, oh man, we're in a recession, or we are things are not, inflation, economy, whatever. It's okay. We've got Dad. You know, he's basically going to rise above it and be mentally strong. Like they need to be able to have that kind of thing that to fall back on mentally of like, our dad's got us covered.
This creates trust.
My husband's got us covered. Like he's going to be mentally strong. It doesn't mean he's necessarily going to always, have just the answer for everything, but he's going to be mentally strong enough to handle it. That's the type of trust we're talking about here.
Absolutely. The next one is being emotionally strong. If you're not emotionally strong, they can't really trust you to be in control and to respond accordingly. So you see this with guys where they're beating their wives or their kids or whatever
Just
else.
Any kind of conflict.
Yeah, any kind of like. They're very emotionally all over the place. That's emotional weakness, and we think it's like, oh wow, he's kind of larger than life emotionally because he has these big outbursts emotionally. No, that means you're weak. You cannot control your emotions, and so you come home and you scare the snot out of your kids because you just had a bad day and you're kind of throwing things around, and they're learning to walk on eggshells around you because boy, we don't want to upset Dad.
That's emotional weakness.
That's emotional weakness. Learn to control your emotions, and so a lot of times we go to the stoic side. We go to the opposite end of the pendulum, which is like. The wall goes up. I don't show any emotion. And we think that that's what a man is he doesn't show. That's not a man either, of showing no emotion. Because what happens is a lot of times guys will bottle up their emotions and then it'll explode at the worst and most inopportune times. Being emotionally strong is being able to tell your wife, yeah, I am scared, but here's what we're going to do about this. And boy, that's in the manosphere. You don't tell your wife, you don't show weakness to your wife at all. She is your confidant. She's your helpmeet. You can say, times are really tough. This is scary. God's going to get us through, and here's my plan to get out of it. That's the mental toughness is here's my plan, right? We're not allowing the negative thought patterns to kind of come in. But the emotion also isn't, I'm anxious, just as anxious as everybody else. No, I'm in control of this. I'm able to say, yeah, this kind of freaks me out a little bit, but here's what we're going to do. Here's how God's going to help us, whatever it may be. You have to provide the emotional stability. And if you're not emotionally strong, they can't rely on you with their problems because they don't know what to expect. If they come to you and Dad is sometimes freaking out just as much as them, it's like, I don't really.
Not going to him again.
Not going to him again. Or if the kids have a problem and they come to you and you flip out and the punishment sometimes ranges from let's go get ice cream to you're grounded for the next 6 months because you're emotionally unstable, and depending on what happened, you just got in a fight with your wife and you take it out on your kids. They can't trust it. They can't rely on you, and that's the problem of being emotionally unstable. You have to have an emotional strength where you're in control of your emotions. Again, it doesn't mean you shut off emotion.
Yeah,
it means I know what to do with emotion when it comes.
And that you can effectively communicate your emotions.
Correct.
Like there is, man, I've got so many thoughts on this, and we got to move on. But like
you
as a man have to be able to effectively communicate your emotions. To Joe's point, it does not mean that you just have no emotions. You shut it all off. It's, let's say you are upset with your kids or upset with your wife. You can be upset. There's nothing wrong with being even angry or upset. If your response to that is flying off the handle, screaming or, threatening, like obviously those things, that's a huge problem. If you're not able to effectively, like, I am very frustrated and upset with you guys right now, and here's the reason why. Let me explain it. Like, that's the way to do it.
Right.
To rationally communicate your emotions. Are you upset? Rationally communicate. And just talk about these things. I mean, goodness knows in a family, you're going to have conflict. You're going to have things that trigger your emotions. You're going to, and we're talking about, I guess, intra-family stuff right now. There's stuff you need to be emotionally strong about kind of outside of your family, but specifically within your family as a husband and father. If they look at you and they're like, he might fly off the handle, or, oh man, he might snap. Like, they don't need to think that about you. You have to be able to have emotion and get upset and be frustrated, but be able to communicate that in a rational way and be able to talk it out in a rational way. That's with a husband and a wife. One of the most unhealthy things you can do is be emotionally unstable and be emotionally weak, because then guess what? You're never going to talk about anything, because it's just like, well, I kind of I want to avoid the hurricane, so I'm just not going to talk about it. That is a terribly unhealthy way to go about things.
Man, that's so
Sorry,
true.
I got a lot of thoughts on this.
I was going to say, we could stay on, I mean, as a therapist, like I could stay on this for days on emotional stability, creating that for your wife, not flying off the handle. But then also, we're talking a lot about wife and kids. That also goes with your job.
For sure.
People need to be able to rely on you and trust you and count on you when things go poorly.
Within the church as well.
Within the church, exactly. Can the church look to you as a leader and say, hey, I know Will's got this because Will is our guy. Will is going to be strong enough to handle this, or whatever it may be. And sometimes you got to set boundaries and go, hey, I can't take that on. And that doesn't mean you're weak. That's okay. But they still need to be, you need to be somebody that they can go to and go, I can trust that he's going to get this job done. Or I can trust that he's not going to just fly off the handle when I come to him with this particular issue. Even if somebody has a beef with you or a bone to pick, you're in control of your emotions where you don't get ultra defensive and, are you kidding me? That's not a man in control of his emotions, man. We could go on for days. The last one is if you're not morally strong. And this is just, they can't trust you to do the right thing. And if they can't, the family ultimately fractures and becomes what you see at the end of the book of Judges. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. So the kids will do what was right in their own eyes. You've lost the moral high ground. I cannot tell you how serious to take this in your home. If you give up the moral high ground, you are toast. Because you will be in the doghouse, your wife will rule, and who are you to say otherwise?
Your family will not respect you.
Your family will not respect you. Guys that look at porn, hey, guess what? Who are you to tell your wife to step in line with her gossip or whatever it may be, or your kids? You're looking at porn every night. You can't step up in that way, and so it creates weak men who have lost the moral high ground in their home. They are not morally strong, and they know it, and whether their kids or wife know it or not, they will experience the effect of somebody who is not morally strong internally. That character of hey, what happens when nobody else is around to see it? If you are torturing yourself up here because it's like, I know I'm not the guy I need to be, how much are you going to call everybody else to be the person they need to be? And if you do, you know you're an incredible hypocrite. And if you don't, you're failing to lead. So you're kind of toast both ways. As a man, we have to create moral stability, moral strength, and of course that's going to be our relationship with God. But when we know who we are and we're morally strong, we are that much more equipped to go lead our family and to call them to a higher standard because we've called ourselves to that.
You've got to have integrity. You just got to you got to be able to, for somebody to look at you and say, he's going to do the right thing. He's not going to cheat me. He's not going to lie. He's not going to, for your spouse, he's not going to cheat on me. He's not, it doesn't mean you'll never ever make a mistake. You'll never, lust after any, like stuff like that. But ultimately, he doesn't have any major vices. He's not going to. He has integrity. He's an honest person. You've got to have that moral strength. And Joe, I can make an argument that moral strength is the kind of honestly the foundation for the previous two we just talked about, the mental and emotional strength. Because if you're not morally strong, if you're shamed about your porn addiction or whatever, guess what? You're probably going to be more likely to fly off the handle with your kids, or like you're not going to have the mental strength to be able to handle stuff. You're not going to be emotionally strong. Like moral strength in a maybe an odd way can kind of be the foundation for those other two. I guess not necessarily physical strength, but the other two specifically, if you've got your morals together, if you're honest, if you have integrity, if you're all these things, the emotional and mental strength is a lot easier. It's a lot harder.
That's a great point.
If you don't have the moral strength to back it up. You're, casting second gazes at other women. If you're, again, kind of looking for ways to cheat on your taxes or whatever it is. Yeah, good luck being mentally strong and emotionally strong. So that would be my thoughts on moral strength. Joe, let's get to how do we build this type of strength? Hopefully you once again have kind of self-diagnosed yourself. And again, if you're like we don't expect you to be 100% in all these areas right now. Specifically as a young man, if you're like 18 years old or 21 or whatever, I would say I'm not 100% in every single one of these areas. But are you moving in that direction? Are you aiming for that? And so how do we get there, Joe? If you want to start with physical strength, probably the easiest one out of all these.
Yeah, absolutely. Hit the gym, specifically lift weights. A lot of guys will go to the gym and they're doing their Pilates or whatever else, and that's good. That's strength training, I suppose. But if you're just on the treadmill all the time, and you see this with runners, where this is going to sound really, really mean.
Boy, I know exactly what you're about to say.
Blow on them and they fall over, but boy, they can run 26 miles. Okay, hit the gym, man. Be strong. Well, that's a certain type of strength. They can run for 26 miles. They can run the marathon. Yeah, but a lot of guys that you see that are running, first off, it destroys your knees and destroys your back. I could get into the guys need to be able to be strong, okay? Hit the gym, lift weights,
There's
lift
a
heavy
testosterone
weights.
factor
There's
to
a
it as well.
testosterone factor to lifting weights. Actually, I can talk about the research on running as well. I don't think we are intended to run long distances personally. I think we are intended to run from things. And so there's quick bursts, things like that. But hey, if you're a runner out there, good for you. All I know is you got to lift weights. And if you're not lifting weights, at least have a blue collar job. Work with your hands. The guys that are like doing the hay bales and they're 80 pounds or whatever else, or 100 something pounds.
They're pretty strong, yeah.
You're doing all right. That's perfectly fine. My dad used to do, with water and sewer, he'd work on like copper pipes, and you'd have to do this, and I mean, he had Popeye forearms. Like, he doesn't really need to hit the gym. Dad was very, very strong in a lot of other ways because he's carrying hundreds of pounds of, machinery and things like that around. Yeah. So, work with your hands. Those would be the first two things I'd say.
Yeah, the next thing is that make sure you're in shape to be able to play with your kids. That's a big goal for me. Why I'm still trying to be very fit and exercise a lot is because Jackson's 3, loves to play. He's going to continue to love to play ball and stuff as he gets older and older and older. I don't want to be limited by that. I don't want to be, oh my goodness, my knees or whatever it is. Like, I want to be able to play with him and be able to spend the time with him, playing ball or whatever. If you do not care about your health, if you do not exercise, don't work out, by the time you hit 35 or maybe even younger for some people, good luck doing that. And so that's a big one. And then finally, as far as how to develop physical strength, pay attention to what you eat. Pay attention to what you eat. Like, I'm not going to sit up here and say I'm the healthiest person in the world. I like my sweet stuff, my sugary foods and drinks. There's a lot of bad food out there, a lot. And so if you're eating fast food, nonstop junk food, dessert every single day, every single meal, really, you're going to be it's scientifically shown to like lower your testosterone, and then just you're not as strong when you're eating that stuff.
Yeah, it really hurts genetics and a lot of other things. So make sure that you're taking care of yourself physically. You want to be as physically strong as possible. Mental is the next one. And what I would say on the mental strength is work toward positive thought patterns. If you're always in the dumps, if it's always like kind of the wallowing, the victim.
Eeyore, I brought up before.
Yeah, Eeyore, there you go. Process through why your thoughts always go to the negative. And sometimes it's like you just expect negative to happen because it's a lot easier to be prepared when you expect for the negative. Try not to be that guy. Your wife and kids need somebody who's going to provide positivity, not fake positivity. Hey, guys, it's great. Like, no, sometimes
genuine positivity,
stinks, man. Yeah. But there needs to be a genuine positivity of, I know things can and will get better, and this is what the psalmist does. My God, why have you forsaken me? But you know what? You've always been good to me, and I know things are going to be good in the future. Like, the psalmist does that a lot, where he always ends kind of with the positive note of, I know who God is. I know that God's going to take care of us. Be somebody who's challenging some of the negative thought patterns and creating that. And the second thing I'd say is challenge yourself. Challenge your willpower. Don't eat that cookie, right? Fast for the day. My wife and I just did a day-long fast, and yeah, it challenges willpower a little bit. It's 24 hours, not that much. I think it was 36. It's not that much. It challenges you a little bit to say, can I do it? Can I push past the hunger pains, whatever that ends up coming? They're not legit hunger pains, but you start getting hungry.
Getting up and going to the gym.
Getting up and go to the gym in the morning. You're like, man, I don't want to do it. Push yourself. I only got 5 hours of sleep. Push yourself, and then get in bed earlier the next night type of thing. So challenge yourself a little bit.
I put on here, this is very similar. Do things that are mentally difficult from time to time. Taking cold showers might seem weird, but like that's some mental strength to be able to take a cold shower when the hot water is so easily accessible, especially right now. We're in the middle of fall heading into winter. Yep. Reading books, specifically reading maybe tougher books. Like anybody can read a fiction book that's entertaining. Yep. Maybe read some stuff that challenges your thinking a little bit, or maybe is a little bit tougher to read. Less screen time. It sure is easy to just scroll. Social media we've talked about before. It's, maybe a mental, what do they call it? Dopamine reset of like where you just stop doing all that. Like things that are mentally difficult, do those things. Yep. And to be honest, I do, you just spent 5 minutes bashing running. That is for me, like, running or jump roping, like cardio stuff. That almost always is mental strength for me.
Cardio is important. Yes.
I can jump rope. I can run. No problem. It's tough and I don't like it. And I want to quit just about every 30 seconds. I was like, okay, I should stop. There's a mental strength to like, no, just keep going. Just, keep going or whatever. So those are kind of some things we'd have for mental strength. Joe, you're the therapist here. Maybe you should talk about emotional strength. I added some things.
Before we get into that, because I was thinking about this, I should add this.
I got the last one on there. Yeah, I forgot.
You got the last one, which I want to do that. And one other thing I'll let you finish on that one. Sure. You need to establish a better relationship with yourself specifically.
You're still on mental strength, just for clarification.
Correct. On mental strength, we're still on this. You need to have a sense of self, good self-esteem, because so much of mental strength is I can't do this. You need to be able to say I can do this. That's not arrogant. to say, I know I can do this. I've done it before. I know I can do this, right? Or maybe I haven't done it before, but I know I have the tools to get there, that I can do this. That's a positive sense of self. And so much of mental strength is beating our own selves. Like, oh, we just can't do this. And we tell ourselves all the things that we can't or won't be able to do or won't get to. Mental strength is being able to say, I know what I'm good at, and I know what I can be good at, and I know that if I work hard enough, I'll get there. There's an inner belief that creates mental strength. You have to have that, and your wife is relying on you to have inner strength, because if she's your strength, she's got to be your cheerleader
rock.
every single time, and your rock. You're doing it wrong. She doesn't want to be your rock all the time. You need to be your own rock. Find it in God. She can be your rock sometimes, but like, you need to be able to say, I believe in myself enough to get this done, because she's counting on you to believe in yourself.
Right.
If she's got to be the one to believe in you 24/7, that gets really, really old, and she starts realizing, man, this guy's weak. She's not going to follow weakness.
Yeah, the last thing I put on here is don't fold like a cheap tent under every mental burden you face. Like, this is, I guess, just on my mind, like the work I do. And even back when I was at Amazon, like people would call out of work. And it's like, oh, why'd you call out? I woke up not feeling well. You know how many days I wake up not feeling very well, and guess what? You suck it up and go to work anyway. Yep. And so, that's kind of one example. But even just like, again, mentally difficult things that people just kind of crumble under the pressure. It does take practice if you're somebody who's kind of used to folding under mental pressure. And man, I just want to get in my bed and go watch Netflix, and that's how I cope with these things. That's pretty mentally weak. And so don't fold like you're gonna have to just practice pushing through those things, not always reverting to your screen or reverting to your bed with your cozy like that's what social media describes of like the memes of people who just always want to be in bed because it's the easiest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Don't be that person. All right, Joe, emotional strength.
Yes, in emotional strength, process through the reasons for your emotions. We talked about this with the anger earlier, things like that. Communicate through them, process through them. Why am I angry? So many young men, like, why are you? I don't know. I just don't know. Like, there are reasons for it. There are reasons you're sad. There are reasons you're grieving. There are reasons you're hurt. There are reasons you're angry, anxious, whatever it may be. There are always reasons. The faster you can get to the reasons, the faster you're going to be able to process through them, communicate through them, whatever it may be. When it takes you 3 days to figure out why you're screaming at somebody, why you're angry, that's not great. We want to get a lot faster. That's part of mental or emotional strength is, I know I can process through this lickety-split. Like, man, this is why I'm angry. Now I can go handle why I'm angry a lot more efficiently. Don't make emotional decisions without the logic. This is a big one on emotional strength. Well, I just went out and I bought this $25,000, whatever it is, just because.
On a whim, kind of.
On a whim, yeah. Or I went out and I bought this $200 TV on a whim, whatever it may be. Like, this is just what I wanted to do because you're kind of feeling a little bit emotional, whatever it is, and you want a quick pick-me-up. So much of emotional strength is I'm not running to the pick-me-ups. I'm staying focused on what I need.
It's tied into moral strength too, but making decisions based off of emotion is how men cheat on their spouse.
That's exactly it.
No logic, no what is this going to do to my family. It's all emotion. It's all follow your heart. Emotional strength is not following your heart.
And a lot of times in that, yeah, you are hurt. Your wife maybe hasn't slept with you in a long time, or maybe your wife is, she's real nag or whatever it may be, and you think you're justified. I know we're getting into moral, but you think you're justified because, well, my feelings are hurt, and she's just not taking care of me emotionally. You know what you're called to do? Lead her.
And be strong emotionally.
Be strong emotionally. Don't let that decision be made emotionally. Use that emotion and go, hey, it's not okay for you to be a nag.
Let's get to the next one. The next one that I have on there. Learn how to rationally communicate. Yes. That's exactly what you're talking about.
That's exactly it. Learn how to rationally communicate your emotions. I don't appreciate when you're a nag. It is really angering, but it also hurts when you continue to nag me that way. Or, I've noticed you don't really ever support me in what I'm trying to do. That really hurts. So instead of just the straight out anger of screaming at her or whatever else it may be, really underneath anger, as we talked before, is hurt or fear. Go talk. Go tell her about your hurt. Go tell her about those things. Well, I'm not supposed to show weakness. Yeah, so great. You're not supposed to show weakness, and how many guys end up cheating on their wives? Guess what's really weakness?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's a lot easier to communicate your emotions, and that's what provides that emotional strength, and not where you're Mr. Depressed all the time. If you're depressed, go take care of it. It's okay to be depressed. It's okay to be anxious. Go take care of it. That's what a strong man does. It's not that a strong man is devoid of all of these things. A strong man knows what to do when they hit. He has the courage to go face his emotions, to go face his depression, to sit in it long enough to go, you know what, I really need some help. Maybe that's therapy, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's hitting the gym. Sometimes it's talking to a good buddy about what you need. But you got to be willing to do it. Sitting there and well, I'm just going to pretend it doesn't happen. That's not emotional strength. That's not strength of any kind. That's stupid. Go figure out how to work through it. That's what emotional strength really is.
I went off on the rationally communicating 10 minutes ago, so I'm not going to have to talk about it
So
anymore
much
about
there.
it. Yeah, exactly.
Go ahead and get
All
us into moral
So
strength.
moral strength. How do you develop moral strength? You have to think about things through the perspective of what are you doing when nobody is around to see you do it. That's kind of the definition of integrity.
Yeah, that
Do you-
integrity
Do
you
you
talked
do
about.
the right thing when nobody's watching? Do you surround yourself with positive influences who push you to be better, or are you hanging out with the wrong people? If you're hanging out with the people who are pushing you to be better, staple of the Godly Men podcast, those who you associate with are kind of going to determine the direction you go in life. If you hang out with a bunch of losers who never push you, kind of emotionally unstable, all these things, you're probably going to mirror a lot of those traits. If you surround yourself with people who are pushing you to be better, morally speaking, godly Christians, people who have good behavior and who don't go out and do crazy immoral things, you're going to, as a young man, you're going to mirror that as well. And so how do you develop moral strength? Be around people who are morally strong. Spend time with people who are morally strong. Look at somebody who is not morally strong and say, I'm gonna hang out with somebody else. Not gonna spend my time with that person. That'd be where I would start.
Yeah, absolutely. An obvious one on here being your Bible and establish a good prayer life. Of course, having a
See
good
our
walk
episode
with God.
two episodes ago. I think it was. Yeah.
In episode 90, about prayer life. Make sure that when you're establishing moral strength, you have this relationship with God. Because what good is being moral if there's no relationship with God? Atheists can be moral. It's going to end up in the same place as the guy who's going out there and cheating on his wife and everything else with reckless abandon. It doesn't really matter. There has to be a relationship with God that makes that matter, that gives it gravitas, I suppose. But yeah, the moral strength is just going to be, do you like who you see? Are you proud of who you see in the mirror? Part of that's, yes, the mental strength of developing a good relationship with yourself. But like, are you proud of who you see in the mirror? And you know what? When you wake up and you're addicted to porn every single day and you're looking at it all the time and don't really care, ask yourself, am I proud of who I am? When you are cheating on taxes or cheating your boss, you're clocking in 15 minutes before you're supposed to, right?
Putting in the bare minimum.
You're putting in the bare minimum. You're barely working. I don't know. You're cussing behind your parents' back, and they know that you really don't want you to do that, or you're sneaking out and going to watch a rated R movie, whatever it may be. Like, I guess that would be young people thing to do. As you get a little bit older, like the stakes get higher on the things that you do. Are you proud of who you see in the mirror? Moral strength is looking at it, trusting that conscience, which I think is from God, to say, probably shouldn't have done that, especially if you've been raised in the church. If you haven't been, the conscience may be seared or may not have much of one. This is why you get in Scripture so much. If you were raised in the church and you have the conscience and it's kind of nagging at you, listen to that. This is what creates moral strength, because when you don't listen to the conscience, it will come back to bite you, and that's when you're really tested. When your wife comes to you and goes, hey, what have you been doing? And you have the opportunity to lie in that moment and go, oh, nothing, or to come clean, your strength is tested in that moment. Are you going to stand firm and be the man of God that you're supposed to be? Because we're godly young men. That's what we're called to be. And we can be young men. The godly is coming along with this moral strength.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think, Joe, I'd love for you to kind of get into the last paragraph you have to kind of wrap this up. I would say kind of what I already said, which is you're probably not going to be at 100% in all of these areas at all times.
Right.
I don't want anybody to think that we've been accused of being too idealistic before. Man, you guys are just perfectionists. Everything has to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect. Then you're going to show you're going to have moments of weakness. You're going to have times where you're not, again, 100% strong in all these areas. The ultimate question, and Joe, I kind of want you to read what you put because you put it beautifully, but my summarization of that would be, are you striving for strength in all those areas? What are you pushing towards? What is your goal? Are you trying to get more physically strong? Are you trying to be more mentally and emotionally strong? And if you're not trying, that's where the problem lies. But if you are, again, we don't necessarily have to expect perfection, but we should strive for perfection. Is kind of the way that I look at that.
Absolutely. And that's what I said. Realize it's okay to not always be at your best. You're defined not by perfection, but by your willingness to work to get there.
That's really good.
You're not defined by the destination. Well, I haven't arrived, therefore. You're not defined by that. Are you on your way? Are you on this journey? You're defined way more by your heart and willingness to get there than by the fact that you're already there. We're not perfect. You're going to struggle. But I like how you said it, which is it needs to be basically incremental. It needs to be something that, I struggle, but I'm not wallowing in this. I'm not staying in this. I'm not perpetually in a state of weakness. You may not be able to bench press 500 pounds. I can't either. Working to get there. It'd be great. I'd love to be able to get to that point. Probably not. Right? But if you can bench press 200, 250, that's something to absolutely work toward. And just because I can't bench press 250 right now doesn't mean I'm not strong. I have a heart and willingness to get to the gym and to pursue that and lifting weights all along the way. That's what you're going to define yourself by, and that's somebody who is strong. I am well on my way to getting there. So yes, physical, mental, emotional, moral, we hope that this has been helpful to you. We hope this is something that you can take and as Will talked about, look at your life. Where am I weakest? I'm not 100% in every, I'm not, you're not, right? None of us are 100% in every single area, but you can look at it and go, you know what? I think I have the moral down. I don't really have any of those vices, but I also find myself flying off the handle a little bit. Maybe my emotions, or maybe I'm always down on myself or kind of wallowing a little bit. I'm not mentally tough. I don't handle challenges very well. Or maybe I need to get to the gym. I'm looking a little scrawny. Whatever it is, that's mine right now is physical. I'm very much working on the physical and hitting the gym and trying to dial in eating, and it doesn't always go well. But I'm recognizing that's maybe where I'm weakest right now. It will shift. That's okay. So
no thoughts to add. That was a good wrap.
This has been episode 92, of the Godly Young Men podcast. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you again next Tuesday.